It had begun with a friendly land exchange, but soon it had disintegrated into deceit, hushed intimations of lawsuits, and family bonds breaking one by one. At the center of it were Kody and Robyn Brown, once the glue that held the sister-wives' family together, now front and center in a courtroom tempest. What was to be a dream, where their plural family could lay roots at last and establish the life they'd preached for years, had become a nightmare. Coyote Pass wasn't land anymore. It was the battleground of a bitter battle over money, property, and truth. In 2018, Kody had stood on Flagstaff, Arizona's Rocky Hills, telling cameras that this would be their future. 4 houses for 4 wives, Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn, and all of their own space, but one big spiritual family. The cameras captured him drawing up blueprints, fantasizing about one big family house. He had vowed this ground would unite them more than ever. But behind the scenes, cracks were already forming. The way the property was bought was messy. 4 separate plots in different names, some under Kody and Robyn, others under LLCs. Janelle and Meri's names, sometimes there, sometimes not, and never quite with the same legal footing. To the outside world, it appeared like typical real estate challenges. But to Janelle, the family's financial pragmatist, bells were clanging. She was not ostentatious. She did not seek notoriety, but she had invested her savings, her trust, and even her complacency into the dream, selling her Las Vegas house, living in an RV on the vacant property, for a dream that never did begin to break ground. Years passed, seasons passed, but the land remained vacant. No foundations, no walls, only emptiness. And slowly, one by one, the family itself started to disintegrate. Christine was the first to leave, walking away from the marriage and the dream. Janelle's patience started to fracture. She began to quietly pull property records, and what she discovered transformed everything. The most valuable parcels, they were in Kody and Robyn's names, single. Meri received a comparable shock. Finding out her legal entitlement was considerably smaller than she'd been encouraged to think. According to the law, the 2 women weren't co-owners. They weren't partners. They were strangers. By late 2024, both of them had had enough. The private complaints turned public filings. Lawyers were retained, notices served. Coyote Pass had technically transitioned from a family aspiration to a battleground for lawyers. And right in the center was Robyn. She'd been portrayed for years as the emotional newcomer, the wife Kody legally wed after divorcing Meri. Critics had labeled her as the favorite, but this wasn't jealousy. This was about signatures on deeds, and hers was on all the big ones. Did she realize what that implied? Was she in on it too, or simply taking direction from her husband, signing where he instructed her to? Those are the questions that were at the center of the courtroom battle. But by that time, damage was already completed. To Meri, it was the final betrayal. To Janelle, a heartless reminder that all her sacrifices were for nothing. Kody, however, dismissed it, labeling it a misunderstanding, assuring that everyone would be taken care of. But the paperwork said otherwise. This was not a misunderstanding. This was power. This was control. This was betrayal. And as the day of court drew near, fans and detractors alike could sense it. The family, once united as a symbol of oneness, was now at war over land, money, and the very root of their faith. Whatever the decision of the judge, one thing was certain: Coyote Pass would never be the same. By the time the court documents were filed, years of underlying tensions had finally boiled over. This was no longer a living room fight. It was now a war in court. Kody Brown, former proud patriarch of a plural family that espoused unity and common values, now sat before 2 of his previous wives, Janelle and Meri, no longer as co-equals but as adversaries. The battlefield wasn't a kitchen table. It was a courtroom, and lawyers, deeds to property, and the pressure of legal repercussions were involved this time. For Janelle and Meri, it was not vengeance. It was about survival. They had trusted Kody for years to manage the family's assets fairly, to keep his promises about the future they'd all been working toward. Coyote Pass was supposed to be part of that future, a shared dream. But now, it was at the very center of a contentious dispute over property, a dispute that was unfolding behind the curtain to reveal the deepest fissures in the Brown family, exposing harsh realities regarding trust, manipulation, and betrayal. The lawyers read through the deeds, line by line, and the reality hit like a punch. Half the property, the 2 most valuable pieces, belonged solely to Kody and Robyn. The other 2 parcels were technically co-owned, but even that shared ownership had loopholes and traps. One of them, Janelle had thought was hers outright, 50%, but the fine print was deceptive. From a legal standpoint, she did not really have any say about how it was sold or used. No control whatsoever. For the woman who had endured snow and wind in an RV, running on a generator, clinging to this dream with both fists, it was a gut blow. She had sold her home in Las Vegas, invested all her savings in the land, endured conditions Robyn had never known, and now she was being told that Robyn had greater legal claim to it than she did. Meri's pain was quieter but no less sharp. Her relationship with Kody had been fractured for years, but she had clung to the hope that her share of the land was secure, her piece of the family's legacy. Learning that she had no controlling interest, that she could be shut out of decisions entirely, that hope crumbled. So they did something legal, not to harm Kody but to protect themselves. Their attorneys required absolute openness, ownership records, title histories, all money transfers in relation to the property. And what they received only made matters worse. Private documents signed by Kody and Robyn alone, resale terms, loan agreements that had parcels of Coyote Pass as collateral, without Meri or Janelle's permission. The initial hearing was scheduled for April 2025. In front of the courthouse in Flagstaff, the atmosphere was half media craze, half fan rally. Fans yelled out for Janelle and Meri. Others donned Team Robyn t-shirts. The Browns, who were once America's fascination with polygamy, were now the stars of a judicial soap opera with no script. Within, the air was heavy. Kody sat rigidly next to Robyn, eyes averted, hands tightly folded, not wanting to even glance at the women across the aisle. When the judge requested opening statements, Janelle's lawyer didn't hesitate. "Your Honor, my client resided on that property. She gave her time, her money, her trust, believing she had a future that never materialized on paper. That is not confusion. That is misrepresentation." Kody's attorney attempted to cushion the blow. Mr. Brown was not motivated by bad faith. This was a complex family dynamic, intended to be resolved later. Later has arrived. Then Robyn was asked to testify. Her voice shook as she vehemently protested. She'd never tried to exclude anyone, that she'd just signed whatever Kody had placed before her, thinking everything was square. And then, the shocker. Janelle's lawyer produced a refinancing agreement, co-signed by Robyn, collateralizing Coyote Pass land as collateral for a loan neither Janelle nor Meri had ever known about. The room fell silent. That paper didn't merely indicate unequal ownership. It indicated Robyn's active participation in financial choices that might have cost the other women everything. If the loan defaulted, the bank could seize land they believed to be theirs. This wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. This was financial betrayal, and possibly legal fraud. The judge demanded a complete audit. All legal, financial, and tax documents relating to Coyote Pass from 2018 through 2025. His demeanor left no doubt. This was no longer a family battle. It was a contract dispute, and if the allegations were valid, the fallout could be devastating. Outside, Robyn was crying. Kody growled at reporters to leave her alone. Janelle, though, was composed. When a reporter asked if she felt betrayed, her response was firm. "I thought we were building a future together. I guess we weren't." The next morning, the headlines read, "Kody and Robyn sued over family land. Betrayal at Coyote Pass." The trial was only just underway, but the damage was already complete. The Browns weren't only splintered, they were shattered. Now the war was about the same soil that once constituted their common destiny. Robyn Brown was the emotional one for years. On television, she was the weeping wife clutching tissues, her words shaking as she described conflicts within the family. She was the innocent newcomer to some, the last of the Browns' wives. To others, she was the tipping point, the quiet flame that ignited the slow unfolding of Kody's polygamist utopia. But courtrooms lack producers. Nobody cues soft piano music when you weep. There were only judges, lawyers, and two ex-sister wives demanding answers here. And as the evidence mounted, title documents, refinancing agreements, co-signed loans, Robyn's name kept recurring, her signature repeatedly, on papers that determined Coyote Pass. The question on everyone's lips was pointed: how much did she actually know? The second day of hearings saw Robyn on the stand. Wearing dark, conservative attire, she was pale, her eyes puffy from crying. She started quietly. "I thought everything that was being done fairly. I trusted Kody. I didn't question him." It was a line she said over and over. But Meri's attorney wasn't letting her off. "Mrs. Brown," he said levelly, "you signed a $150,000 refinancing agreement on Parcel C of Coyote Pass as collateral. Did you know that Meri and Janelle were never informed about it?" Robyn's face hardened. "I didn't know the details," she breathed. "I just signed where Kody instructed me to." The courtroom murmured. Even the judge had an eyebrow go up. Because the truth was, Robyn had a history of being part of family finances. Fans had witnessed her talking about budgets, debts, and mortgages in length. She was the one who had advocated for the large Flagstaff house in 2019, a house she and Kody actually shared together. For Janelle and Meri, a pattern was emerging. As Janelle later told reporters, she always ended up with the house, the stability, the attention. Now we're supposed to believe she didn't know about the land being used behind our backs. Meri, usually guarded, added simply, "We trusted the dream, but trust isn't the same as blind obedience." Still more documents emerged. Robyn had signed off on the land-tied loans without consulting the other wives. The highest-priced lot, best location, highest resale value, was signed by only her and Kody. Even her 2024 acquisition of a $2.1 million mansion appeared to coincide with the payoff on their former Flagstaff home, partially financed by Coyote Pass equity. It wasn't against the law, but it certainly left no doubt. Robyn wasn't a passive observer. She was definitely taking an active role in determining the Browns' financial destiny, and her profits had been paid for with the security of the other wives. By day 3, Robyn was exhausted-looking. Court reporters witnessed a private moment in which she leaned in and whispered to Kody through tears, "I didn't sign up for this," before she was led away by her lawyers. But the turning point came when the judge addressed her directly. "Mrs. Brown," he addressed her calmly, "it is my observation that you have either been shockingly misinformed by your husband, or you were a party to the willful withholding of facts which concern the rights of others. In either event, this court must determine whether your involvement destroyed the legal integrity of joint property ownership." The words fall like a gavel blow. Outside, reporters surged. Headlines shrieked. Robyn's land war role raises eyebrows. Innocent or in the middle of it. Sister wives bombshell. Robyn not so innocent. Her public image was rapidly evolving. No longer was she the reserved, soft-spoken newcomer, but increasingly she was being viewed as Kody's ally, not necessarily a co-conspirator perhaps, but very definitely a benefactor of the choices which had left the other wives with nothing. Kody attempted to protect her, taking the stand in his characteristic confidence. "I made those decisions to keep the family safe," he explained. "Robyn's name's on the land because she's my lawful wife. It was never about leaving anyone out." But his words had more questions than answers. Why was Janelle, who had donated sweat, money, and years, not listed on those documents? Why not Meri? How could a man who preached oneness condone decisions that put 3/4 of his marriage in the dark? By the end of the week, Robyn's reputation was in tatters, and as Janelle's lawyer closed the day's session, his words pierced the courtroom. "This isn't about hurt feelings. It's about legal betrayal. Robyn Brown benefited while others were deceived." When the gavel finally fell, ending that day's proceedings, the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Robyn's devotion to Kody had come at a cost: the trust of Meri, the respect of Janelle, and the carefully polished reputation she'd fought to protect in the public eye. Whether the court would see her as a victim of Kody's influence or as a willing participant in a quiet but devastating betrayal, that was still to be decided. But one thing was certain: the damage was done. Coyote Pass was not merely land anymore. It was a symbol of preferential treatment, deception, and a loss that could never be reversed. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged, nearing reverence, as the judge stood to speak. 3 days of testimony, paperwork, tears, and growing tempers had all been building to this moment. To one side sat Kody, teeth gritted, arms folded like a barrier. Next to him, Robyn, eyelids red, lids puffy, tissues clutched in her lap. Across from them, Meri and Janelle, still reserved but ready to be hit. The judge started with a measured tone, setting the stage before delivering the punch. "This case is unusual," he declared. "It's cohabitation, spiritual unions, family-style arrangements not sanctioned by statute, but what are sanctioned are deeds, financial arrangements, and contracts. Feelings cannot be weighed by the court. We can weigh paper only." And on paper the trail was evident and ominous. The judgment came package by package. Parcel A, previously entangled in partial ownership, would now be divided evenly, 25% each, among Kody, Robyn, Janelle, and Meri. Parcel C ditto. A nod, the judge continued, to both the financial and emotional investments made by all. Janelle breathed slowly. Meri blinked twice. It was vindication, but only partial. Next was Parcel B, the gem of Coyote Pass. Level land, optimal location, ready for development. Kody and Robyn had taken it by assertion, claiming a loan they'd employed to partially finance their Flagstaff mansion. The judge did not agree. "This parcel," he stated, "was bought with the expectation of family use. Documents indicate Janelle and Meri were deceived about its intended use, and this deception obtained financial leverage." And then came the hammer. Parcel B would be transferred in its entirety, 50% to Meri, 50% to Janelle. Gasps filled the courtroom. Robyn's hand went to her mouth. Kody turned red in the face. "Wait," he blurted out, "that ground is tied to our." The judge overruled him. "You misrepresented ownership. That property was used as collateral with income based on the entire family. The court has spoken." It wasn't merely a legal change, it was symbolic. The most coveted parcel of real estate, which had been clutched so tightly by Kody and Robyn, was now in the hands of the very women they had driven to the margins. And as for Parcel D, the worst of the three, Kody and Robyn retained it, but on strict terms. Any subsequent sale or refinancing had to be done with complete disclosure to all Brown family members, and some of the proceeds would go into escrow in the event Christine made additional claims for child support or prior contributions. The gavel came down. Robyn sobbed, holding Kody's arm. "I don't believe this is happening," she whispered. Kody attempted to speak again, but his attorney ushered him back. Outdoors, the media blew its top. Judge SBAKS in favor of Janelle and Meri. Coyote Pass cracked in court. ROBYN cries during land war ruling. Internet forums blew up with responses. Finally, justice for Janelle. This isn't about land, it's about years of favoritism crumbling. When the dust had settled, Meri and Janelle stood together on the courthouse steps. They had no much to say to one another, but when a reporter asked Meri whether she felt vindicated, she replied quietly, "I feel seen. For the first time in years, I feel seen." Janelle nodded. This wasn't revenge. This was truth and creating a future that belongs to all of us. At the same time, Robyn was nowhere to be seen. Kody, accompanied by his lawyer, made only a quick statement. "This ruling," he said, "was based on misunderstandings." His voice told them they'd appeal, but it sounded hollow. The former Iron Hand Kody had on the family legacy and land had been broken, not by rumor, but by the cold, unyielding force of the law, and by the voices of the very women he believed would never move against him. For Meri and Janelle, this victory in court was not merely about dirt and deeds. It was about reshaping a decade of imbalance, favoritism, and subtle economic manipulation. And the effect, it was seismic. Kody no longer owned a majority interest in Coyote Pass. Robyn's status as the legal wife no longer came with the comfort and authority she'd had. The pain that Meri and Janelle had harbored in secret was now supported by the full weight of legal sanction. And outside the theatrics, the judge's decision had established precedent. Even spiritual marriages, those that were invisible to the state, could not opt out when money and property were involved. At that moment, the dynamics of power in the Brown family had forever changed. There would be no turning back. The massive courthouse doors swung shut behind them, but the aftershocks of the ruling rippled well beyond those Arizona walls. For Kody and Robyn, this wasn't merely a court loss. It was the destruction of an empire they'd built in tandem, quietly. For Meri and Janelle, it was vindication, sweet, irrefutable vindication. And for millions viewing from home, it was the moment the facade finally broke, and the illusion of togetherness shattered into shards too cutting to reassemble. Kody and Robyn had been silent in the days leading up to the verdict. No more carefully constructed family photos, no vigorous assertions of togetherness, no lengthy justifications of their decisions. Friends close to them indicate Kody was fuming, not only with the judge, but with the whole system. He complained to friends that the courts were ignorant of plural marriage, that the decision was driven by his former wife's bitterness. But nothing could reverse the fact. Coyote Pass was no longer his to dictate. Robyn, horrified, watched her well-honed reputation sullied. For years, she'd been the tearful, soft-spoken voice of sympathy on sister wives. Now, in many people's eyes, she was a prime mover in the money dealings that had left the other women with nothing but grief. Their withdrawal from the public eye wasn't just psychological, it was also physical. 2 weeks or so after the verdict, property records confirmed Kody and Robyn had sold their Flagstaff mansion. That glittering, million-dollar compound, bigger and more opulent than anything the other wives had been accustomed to, was no more. They acquired a lower-key, lower-profile home, bought under an LLC, in effort, maybe, to hide subsequent deals from prying eyes. But the memories lingered. Their castle had crumbled. For Janelle, the court ruling was a turning point. She'd ridden out the storm in dignity, and though she hadn't emerged victorious in every battle, she'd been vindicated. She didn't waste any time in planning Parcel C, the prime real estate she and Meri now owned free and clear. Rumors circulated that she was consulting with architects to build a sustainable, modest house. A house that was hers and hers alone. "I gave everything to this family," she told a magazine. "Now I'm building something for me." Meri also found her footing. For years, she'd been greeted with cold remoteness and public humiliation. But now, her unobtrusive strength had honed into something ruthless. She started a wellness company, created a podcast about women's empowerment, and began dating a man who appreciated her as a woman, not as a plaything in a plural marriage. "It took me years to figure out I was worthy," she said in a live stream. "And now, I'm not looking back." Janelle and Meri weren't rebuilding the old family, they were reclaiming their futures. Christine Brown, who had left Kody years earlier for a new life in Utah, watched from afar. But make no mistake, she was watching closely. In an Instagram live, she didn't hold back. "I'm proud of Janelle and Meri. It's about time Kody was held accountable." And she wasn't stopping at applause. Her attorneys soon moved to reconsider child support and paternity terms for her youngest daughter, Truly. She claimed Kody left the birth certificate blank and only provided intermittent support. The court's decision on Coyote Pass had left the door open, and Christine was pushing it open with speed. Online, the public opinion was quick. TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube exploded with hashtags "Justice for Janelle," "Meri wins," "Robyn exposed." Fans analyzed courtroom transcripts, rewatched past episodes, and linked previous tearful confessions with current-day revelations. A viral video called "Robyn Caught Lying on the Stand" garnered more than 3 million views in only 2 days. This was no longer reality TV melodrama. It was a reckoning, a call for accountability, justice, and closure from a fan base that had spent over a decade of heart in this story. And then in the season finale, shot prior to the verdict, Kody is alone at the edge of Coyote Pass, looking out over the wide, unbroken land. No wives to his side, no empire to govern, only one man and the open horizon. The camera lingers over Coyote Pass, vacant dirt roads vanishing into nowhere, weeds whipping in the breeze, the skeletal forms of foundations that never got poured, no houses, no guffaws of kids, no visions accomplished, only emptiness. "I thought we had something special here," Kody whispers, as if to himself. "I really did." But he did not, because creating something great takes more than epic plans and command. It takes truth, equality, and integrity. It cannot be sustained by promises and power alone. Ultimately, the fight over Coyote Pass was never so much about land as it was about something profounder: having control of one's own life, taking back a voice that had been taken away, and confronting the hard reality that oftentimes, the individuals who we most entrust our trust to are those who will benefit the most from our silence. Robyn's absolute loyalty to Kody had cost her the others' trust. Kody's absolute rule had cost him his family, and the women who had once been shunted to the peripheries, ignored, dismissed, made legally invisible, walked out of that courtroom not as casualties, but as victors. And as the dust settles over Coyote Pass, there is only one truth left: the Brown family is no more.